Hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am interviewing Cheetah, my dear friend in New York City, and she is going to tell us about her journey to the US, her experience in South Africa, and about her new book that she has updated recently. So Cheetah, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your upbringing in South Africa in a nutshell, and how that led to you coming to the USA.
Well, I grew up in Natal, KwaZulu-Natal now. We lived in an English-speaking world, somewhat isolated from a sense of the whole context of South Africa. We did not know any Afrikaners at all. But we were raised by Zulus,
nice.
Which we were blessed. These wonderful people. Also, that contributed a lot to our language, ability to understand. In New York, it's sometimes fun to talk to fellow South African in Zulu, because you know no one will understand.
Right.
But yes, so I went to school there, and then I went off to University of KwaZulu-Natal. Then Natal University, I graduated with a BA with Masters in Roman Law. I thought I might be a lawyer. But then immediately became a journalist and worked for Argus newspapers in Cape Town. Then I started working for the Argus company. Bless them, sent me to New York in 1975.
Oh, wow.
It's a large newspaper group, it was the biggest, and they decided that it was time to send somebody to the United States. TV was coming to South Africa 1975, very late at that point, but right. I think the apartheid regime realized they couldn't stop the images of blacks and whites mixing in the outside world anymore.
Right.
And so much of the TV did involve this, happy cohabitation between races. So I was sent here, and I was one of the most fortunate people, because 1975 in the United States, it was a fabulous time, because it was not just the civil rights movement was taking off. Really, there was a lot of conflict, right. But the women's movement, it was really changing things in this country, and of course that was good news for women in South Africa, which is a very patriarchal country, as we all know, on every ethnic level.
Right. Very
so
true.
But bless them, the newspapers covered these stories, or shall I say, the stories sent to the women's pages, the women's editors used them, and so there was just a mass to write about. It was so important, it was so interesting.
And so that's what brought you to US, and you still reported back to the Argus.
I reported, they had an office in Times Square, and we worked there full time. Eventually the economy in South Africa plummeted. They couldn't afford to keep the office in Times Square, okay. And we were asked to work from home.
Okay. And
it was hard to earn a living just writing for South African publications. So I started to freelance for other newspapers and magazines in UK, Australia, all over the world.
Wow.
That made it possible to earn a living keep going as a journalist.
Right,
so I continued to write for South Africa. But eventually that became, I'd say, after about 15, 20 years. And then my life had changed during that time. I moved out of New York, which had had a tough time. I'd had a son, and I began to feel more like an American. And of course, starting to write for American publications as well. And eventually, after September 11, when I had a child and two stepchildren at school, who came home crying. You know, their friends' parents had been killed. It was devastating, and I realized that for the sake of my children, I really ought to become an American. So I, you know, nearly 25 years after I left, I became an American, but I never said goodbye to being South African formally, you know.
Yeah. I think
you always are that,
right?
You know?
Absolutely. And I think I meet so many people here in New York, and everyone still holds tight onto their South African culture, and having been born there or raised there, people constantly go back. So that's wonderful to see that it took you 25 years of living in America to choose to become an American.
Yeah, I think it was that long. I'm not exaggerating. September 11, that was, yeah, it was about 25 years after I came.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So tell us a bit about upstate New York and how that brought about your book.
Well, being a journalist is all I'd done all my working life. So living up there, I eventually moved to this fabulous agricultural area called the Black Dirt region, and it had fascinating history. It provides an enormous amount of produce for New York City and the whole area. This it's called the tri-state area, so there are a number of states involved.
Right.
The soil is rich and black, and we lived, my husband and I lived right in the middle, surrounded by farmland. You couldn't build on it. You can't build on it because it used to be swamp.
Right.
But it is so fertile, and it became clear to me after a while, nobody had ever written about this place. And here am I, a journalist. I got involved in the community. I got involved in the Chamber of Commerce and was even president for a year or two. And I wrote a newsletter for them. And then that was when I started to write about it, interview the farmers and learn about what was going on. And it became clear to me that this was a really important story. People didn't know about this, not only this fabulous black soil, but the people who settled there, Polish, German, 120, 150 years ago, and turned it into what it is, and how much value they produce, not just fresh produce, but also you don't have to ship this stuff across the country now. So by providing produce for this big, what I call the biggest mouth in America, this whole area around New York and New Jersey, Connecticut, they were stopping the transport of all this stuff from other states, doing so much good for the environment.
Right.
Another reason to write about it. So I was motivated on a number of levels, and farmers have a lot of problems people don't know about.
I'm sure.
So that was also a motivating factor. You just wanted to let people know. There were some prejudices against farmers, but I thought, you know, it was time to deal with that. So it took me 3 years to write.
Wow.
A lot of research, and but I thought it was worthwhile. My husband helped me, supported me the whole way through, and the community was fabulous. A lot of the farmers were a little anxious about getting publicity.
Okay.
But the younger farmers, well, I'd say more in their 40s and 50s, they said, hey, it's time. So they were helpful, gave me information. And
So when did you write your first book? Because this is the 3rd edition.
So this one, Pride and Produce, the 3rd edition, CBD. I read the first one, it came out, you know, I started writing, getting the information in about 2014. And eventually it came out at the end of 2016. And then I reprinted it in 17, and then it sold out a year ago, and I thought that's it. But then people began to contact me and say, Cheetah, where's your book? We need it. You know, I want to buy 5 copies, or, you know, I was blown away. What's going on? And then I was told a lot of interest was now developing in growing CBD hemp for CBD as a wellness product, something that helps a lot of people. It sounds like pot, it sounds like marijuana, but it's related but not. It's completely different. It's strictly regulated so that you're not growing marijuana, you're growing CBD. And a lot of farmers thought, because making money as a farmer is tough, it's really tough. A lot of people thought maybe we can grow this and make some money, but it's very expensive.
Right.
And so anyway, the interest in it, I would say some of the biggest farmers in the region, almost all of them, not all, they invested a lot of money, and last season they grew CBD hemp.
Was it successful? How did that go for them?
Well, it was not as successful. I think a lot of them lost some money because it's new, and the whole marketing issue was a problem. You needed to be able to process the plant, and that's complicated and very expensive. There wasn't enough processing, as I understand it, and as a result, some farmers did not make much money. Some of them lost quite a lot. But my understanding is they have not lost interest. And while I cover what it takes, it's very labor intensive. That is costly. I think the enthusiasm is still there, but now they've learnt. A lot of the farmers are going to make sure they've got outlets, processors, markets, or whatever is needed to make it profitable.
Absolutely.
But it certainly has helped.
And seeing that it was their first go around with the CBD, I'm sure that they are willing to come back and try it another time and learn. That's the only way we go forward.
That's exactly right. It's true with almost every new crop.
Right.
I think that was true when they, out in the Black Dirt region, they started growing onions, and then they became famous for onions. They did celery. They're now also known for lettuce and everything else. But it's always a sort of a learning experience.
Right, with anything, and it's a trial and error. So
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be back more successful.
I think
next
so.
year.
I think so. Meantime, it's helped me with the book, so I'm thrilled. I wish them all the best.
So where can this book be bought, and how much is it retailing for? If people are interested, how can they find this book?
The book, there's no bookstore in that region. As you know, bookstores really struggled, and it's available on ebooks through a website called warwickinfo.net. You go there, you'll see where all the e-versions and Kindle are available. And then there are a number of stores throughout the Black Dirt region. That's in Florida, in Orange County, in Goshen, and in Warwick. There are stores that are selling it,
Okay.
and in Pine Island, which is the heart of the Black Dirt region. And I can mention a few. Newhard's in Warwick is selling it. It's a lovely store anyway, and the Werner's in Florida, which is also right there in the middle of the Black Dirt region, and a number of the restaurants and cafes and diners in the whole area, Quaker Creek, the Harvest, CJ's, that whole region. They're
Okay.
selling it because they're in it in a way.
Right, of course.
And they've all been fabulous. It costs $19.95, and some of the outlets have dropped the cost, and but it's got some pictures, and it's very much the same as the original book, with a little update on the CBD and some of the other issues that are affecting farming in the area. There's the 3rd edition out there.
That's amazing. That's incredible that you've come from South Africa, worked as a journalist, and have made your way here right now, and having written a book at your third edition. Will we see any other books from you, Cheetah?
Well, I'm getting encouraged. I don't have anything planned right now, but you know, Mandy, I would absolutely love to write a book about growing up in South Africa in the old days.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, a lot of people have done it, but you know, it's such a fascinating country. We were lucky, we were privileged to have grown up there. And while it's a troubled country, was then and is now, it's an amazing story.
Right.
And I think now South Africans are every race, men, women, all just really interesting people because the country is what it is.
Yeah, that's very spot on.
Yeah, so that's my next project. My siblings are all great writers. My older brother Simon, my younger brother Cheetah Haysom, he's a well-known political fellow. He's won a prize for writing a play. My sister Lou Haysom, she writes for a living, she's an editor, and so they're writers in the family. Get together.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see something from you, Haysom,
Yes.
again.
Yeah, that would be cool.
So Cheetah, tell us about South Africa. What are your thoughts about what's going on there right now, and what do you suggest for them being outside of everything that's going on there?
Well, it seems a little impertinent when you're not living there to give prescriptions.
No, of course.
But I do feel a little more optimistic than I was a couple of years ago. I think, but I know that times are tough. That under Cyril Ramaphosa there are still enormous difficulties, and that people should do everything they can to help. There is that's a sort of a tolerance and an intolerance. Don't put up with corruption. Don't put up with incompetence. But at the same time, just make sure that as much money goes into education as possible.
Yep.
The things that are important, you know, restore and retain all those things that make South Africa still special. Keep getting the economy going. Don't despair. This is an extraordinary country, and with enormous potential. And so, you know, I don't know enough detail to say this is what you do.
Of course.
But keep those democratic processes going, and integrity, honesty, all the things that, you know, every country needs. We know that in the developed world, and every country has its flaws, so don't give up on South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like no matter where South Africans go, there's always that longingness to go home.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
visit again.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's nothing like it. I would say one thing that really worries me and other people is it's one of the worst places in the world for crime against women. That is just totally unacceptable.
Right.
And you hear it mentioned a lot. It does not help South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Something has to be done to stop that. And I know that the efforts are being made. Women themselves are speaking out, protesting now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that at government level, more action is being taken. It has to be, because that is really an issue. But hey, what a fabulous place. How lucky we were. Mandy.
Definitely. Yeah. Incredibly lucky. Some of my most fondest memories, and you know, nothing like African sunrises, the African air. Yeah, just no matter where you go in the world, you'll always be looking for something as unique and amazing as South Africa is. So it would definitely be nice for the country to come out of the situation it's been in.
I think it can too.
Yeah.
A little time and courage and, you know, enterprise, integrity. And international investment and faith in South Africa, that will help as well.
Maybe the next time we sit down, we can discuss, or people can help us discuss ways in which we can show South Africans around the world that South Africa just needs some investment, and it would be a much better place.
Yeah, and that's why I think that one of the best things we can do is continue to help raise money for education in South Africa. It's the one thing I still do for my country of my birth, and we have to keep that going, because education is everything, not just in Africa, here too. That's what we learned.
Wonderfully said, Cheetah. It was lovely speaking to you and catching up and hearing your amazing story, how it's brought you from South Africa and KwaZulu-Natal, to be specific, right here to New York, and living in New York City, enjoying, you know, the amazing winter we're having.
Yes.
If anybody wants to buy Cheetah's book, I believe she's mentioned the website, and if not, I will tag it down below. But Cheetah's book is called Pride and Produce, and it's the 3rd edition about CBD. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. Thanks, Mandy.
You're welcome. Bye.